Hello and welcome to this video about the SmartBox AIS feature. To access the AIS feature, click on the AIS button. AIS is an automatic identification system to automatically identify the location, speed over ground and course over ground for vessels within the range of your AIS receiver. With an AIS transceiver, you can also publish the location, speed over ground and course over ground of your own vessel. The AIS feature monitors the location, speed over ground and course over ground of other vessels, which we call AIS targets, and displays the targets on a map. The AIS feature also calculates the closest point of approach between your own vessel and the AIS targets, and creates a list of targets that are perceived as a potential threat. The potential threat list contains a list of AIS targets that are perceived as a threat according to the settings in the current configuration profile. Watch the video about configuration profiles and settings for more information on configuration profiles, but suffice to say, you can have different settings for the AIS feature for various scenarios, for example in a harbour or offshore. Above the list of potential threats, a data panel shows your vessel heading, course over ground, speed over ground, and the range of the displayed map from the centre of the map to the map corners. Any vessel where the closest point of approach is within 2 nautical miles of your vessel is perceived as a potential threat and may appear in the potential threats list. All vessels, regardless of the closest point of approach, unless otherwise configured, will appear on the map. Each AIS target in the potential threat list contains the following elements: a vessel identifier, either the vessel name or its MMSI number, the vessel speed in knots, the range from your vessel in nautical miles or meters, and the bearing to the vessel. Then the closest point of approach distance in nautical miles or meters, and the time to the closest point of approach. Or it could also be the crossing gap time, and we'll have more on that later. The potential threat list entries are color-coded according to the threat level. The highest threat level is a collision risk. When the closest point of approach is lower than a configurable value, for example 100 meters, that is considered to be a collision risk. The next two levels are when your vessel has an intersecting course with an AIS target. A bow crossing is when your vessel crosses the bow of the AIS target within 1000 meters. And the stern crossing is when your vessel crosses the stern of the AIS target vessel within 300 meters. 3 more threat levels are defined for non-intersecting courses. A warning when an AIS target comes within 300 meters, when an AIS target comes within 1 kilometer, and when an AIS target comes within 1 nautical mile. The AIS targets displayed on the map are also color-coded and use the same colors as the threat list. The collision risk is red, and the threat list entry has a red background. The bow crossing is orange, and the threat list entry has an orange background. The stern crossing is blue, and the threat list entry has a light blue background. The 300 meter closest point of approach warning is yellow, and the threat list entry has a yellow border. The 1 kilometer closest point of approach warning is purple, and the threat list entry has a purple border. And finally, the 1 nautical mile warning is green, and the threat list entry has a green border. Each AIS target and your own vessel is displayed on the map with a thin blue line that extends from the front of the vessel in the direction of the course over ground. The length of the line is based on the vessel's speed, and the end of the line is an estimate of where the vessel will be in 10 minutes' time. When you have an intersecting course with an AIS target within certain bounds, then instead of showing a line showing the vessel course for the next 10 minutes, intersecting lines are shown between your vessel and the other vessel, and may change colour according to the point of intersection and each vessel's speed. If a collision risk is perceived, then the intersecting lines will be red. If your vessel will cross the bow of the other vessel within 1,000 meters, the intersecting lines will be orange. If your vessel will cross the stern of the other vessel within 300 meters, the intersecting lines will remain blue. As your vessel changes position, a thin blue line on the map records your vessel track. If you have a current active route, you can also view the active route and waypoints on the AIS screen for a combination of AIS target display and route and waypoint progress. You can display the active route by clicking the map marker icon adjacent to the course over ground value in the data panel. The next waypoint location, bearing, distance, and estimated time of arrival at the waypoint is shown when displaying the active route. The remaining distance and estimated time of arrival to the final waypoint in the route is also displayed. When an AIS target becomes a potential threat, then an alarm start event is raised. Similarly, when the vessel is no longer a threat, then an alarm stop event is raised. Watch the alarms video to find out how alarms are configured, and watch the configuration video to see how to manage configuration settings. There are a number of configuration settings that affect how the AIS feature operates. You can permanently modify the configuration settings for the AIS feature in the configuration section. When the AIS screen is active, you can temporarily modify the configuration settings for the current session. Click on the gear icon in the data panel to access the options dialog to temporarily change the configuration settings. Any changes you make will remain active until you move away from the AIS screen to another part of the program. All alarm events can be enabled or disabled by checking or unchecking the Alarms Enabled checkbox. Repeat alarms can be enabled or disabled by checking or unchecking the Alarms Repeat checkbox. When checked, every time a vessel becomes a potential threat, an alarm start event is raised. When unchecked, an alarm start event is raised only once for each vessel at each threat level. The gap time option, when checked, shows the crossing gap time for bow or stern crossings rather than the time to the closest point of approach. The crossing gap time is the time difference between your vessel and the AIS target vessel reaching the crossing point. The Hide Nearby option allows us to hide vessels within 50 meters when checked. If a vessel is that close, you are most likely watching every move the vessel makes. The Hide Stationary option allows us to hide stationary vessels when checked. The North Up option displays the map as either north up when checked, or cursor when unchecked. The Threats Only option allows us to hide all other vessels unless they are a potential threat. The Within Range option allows us to ignore other vessels unless they are within the range value in the data panel, and thus will be visible on the map. The tracking limit value is the range at which the AIS feature will evaluate other vessels as a potential threat. Any vessel beyond the tracking limit will be ignored. The collision radius value defines the closest point of approach value in meters at which a vessel is perceived as a collision risk if it comes within that radius of your own vessel. And finally, we can change the order of the vessels in the potential threat list. By range, the closest vessels appear at the top of the list. By CPA distance, the vessels with the smallest CPA value appear at the top of the list. By time to CPA, the vessels that will reach their CPA soonest appear at the top of the list. And by threat level, the vessels with the highest threat level appear at the top of the list. To view detailed information about a vessel, either click on the entry in the potential threat list or click on the icon for the vessel on the map. We can alter some configuration settings for individual vessels. Click on the Options button in the Ship Detail dialog. We can enable or disable alarms for this vessel, or enable or disable repeat alarms for this vessel. We can ignore the vessel and also set a collision radius just for this vessel. These are temporary changes and will be lost if you move away from the AIS screen to another part of the SmartBox program. So that's a brief introduction to the SmartBox AIS screen, and thanks for watching.